With a thumping victory, President Vladimir Putin is set to overtake Joseph Stalin and become Russia's longest-serving leader in more than 200 years. Now, he has strengthened his grip on power in an election victory perceived as lacking democratic legitimacy. Even as Russia fights a long-drawn war with Ukraine, its relationship with the rest of the world, including India, is impacted by Vladimir Putin's worldview. What does this mean for India? In the recent past, riding on oil purchases and trade, there's a renewed bonhomie in India-Russia ties. Defense purchases, the defense relationship is stronger than before, despite India's Make in India initiatives. There's a certain chemistry that Prime Minister Modi enjoys with President Putin. Recently, Prime Minister Modi's intervention reportedly averted a possible nuclear attack by Russia. Joining me to discuss President Putin's fifth six-year term are Sammy Kotwani, the Russia-based president of the India Business Alliance, and my colleague Deepak Bhadana. Mr. Kotwani, welcome to the News9 Plus Show.
Thank you for inviting me.
What's the weather like in Moscow today?
Gloomy. It's still, today it's a warm day. Yesterday was -5, +5. Today is +1, +4.
Right.
So spring is coming.
Spring is coming, and there's a spring in President Putin's step as well, another six-year term. But Mr. Kotwani, tell us what this means for the India-Russia business relationship. 6 more years of President Putin.
Now, give me some time to explain you why Mr. Putin. It never happens overnight. He came to power in 2000. And do you know how many pensioners are there in this country? If I'm not wrong, 42 million people.
Right.
He's the one who has been taking care of them from last 20 years.
Right.
In 1990s, the whole country was in a big turmoil when it was taken by other leaders. And in 10 years, this city had all the mafia, gangsters, whatever you want to say.
Right, right.
After Mr. Putin coming back to power, the first thing he took care was the pensioners. He's taking a very good care of them.
Yes.
42 million voters.
Right.
Now, let us go a little bit ahead.
Yes.
He's been taking care of teachers, all the school, college-going teachers,
Yes.
all the people. In 90s, I have a driver who was a MiG driver. The pilots were driving the taxi.
Right.
So maybe a good amount of working people were driving the taxis. And when Mr. Putin came in power, he took care of all the educated people,
Yes.
all the professionals. So, it's like you have to understand nothing happens overnight. It's not that I myself, I'm the only one Indian who got a Russian passport without a Russian wife.
Right.
I'm
Okay.
the only Indian holding a Russian passport.
Right.
So I went for election yesterday. I myself voted for Mr. Putin.
Right.
And it was very well organized. It was such a, interesting to, it's second time I'm voting for him.
Yes.
So it's very well organized and everything is good. So all I want to say is we Indians enjoy the best, we were always loved in Russia. We were always favored in Russia. I want to tell through this medium that in Russia, there are no Pakistanis, there are no Sri Lankans, there are no Bangladeshis.
Right.
They all proudly call themselves Indians.
Right.
So
you're saying
that's the
everyone
power
from
of
South Asia calls themselves Indians when they're in Russia?
Indian.
Right. So that's
Yes.
the overall, Russian national identity kind of situation. Because,
Yes.
Mr. Kotwani, whenever I meet a lot of people from Russia, from diverse parts of Russia, I always ask them, where are you from and who are you? So they say, we are Russian. They might be Kalmyk, they might be Tajik, they might be from Siberia, but they will always identify themselves as Russian. So you see this kind of a Indian national identity also coming over South Asia. But
Yes.
Deepak, you've been tracking President Putin's career very closely. What's the first thing that came to mind when you heard that he's won another election that could, bring him closer to Joseph Stalin's record of the longest served Russian leader?
I think it took me back to the end of the 90s and the very turbulent period that Mr. Kotwani had just referred to.
Where MiG fighter pilots were
driving cabs. So that was a time when the USSR had dissolved, Russia was in dire straits.
Right.
and in came this young Prime Minister.
The mayor of St. Petersburg.
The mayor of St. Petersburg, then the chief of the FSB,
Yes.
who's appointed the Prime Minister to an ailing Russian president,
Right.
Mr. Yeltsin. And it was kind of phenomenal how he turned the whole thing around.
Yes.
In 10 years, Russia was once again a booming nation.
Right.
But I would want to ask Mr. Kotwani, what is the difference in the Russian government, the way it functions, and in Mr. Putin himself in the span of these 20 years? And these 20 years have been like phenomenal on a lot of different like fronts, say geopolitics, geoeconomics. How do you see Mr. Putin and his government changing over 2 decades?
See, if you see from last 2 years, the Prime Minister is Mishutin, right? Before that, he was a tax minister. I'm a professional tailor in town, so I dress all who of who. So knowing these people, let me tell you, this very professionally done. The Prime Minister has taken good care of this country. They are growing. We have got a new economic minister. We have a new trade and industry minister, Mr. Manturov. Mr. Manturov was born in India, if I'm not wrong. He knows Bombay better than me. So these people are very professional, and the industry has grown from bounds and leaps during this crisis.
Right.
The local industry has grown too much. They have been giving all the, they were always export oriented, but now if you're rich, you want a cheese from France, so you're welcome to have it, but the prices are very ridiculous. So blue cheese cannot be afforded by Russians. So they started manufacturing their own cheese.
Right.
So everything they started manufacturing locally. So, for me, all the luxury items are international items, but local items are much more easy, affordable, and easily available.
So that's
this country,
Mr. Kotwani, it's interesting that you should mention that, because I was just speaking to a friend who just got off a flight from Moscow this morning, and he was telling me exactly this, that there's no signs of any war in Russia. It's absolutely normal. The streets are filled with people. The stores are full of food. It's just like Russia, there was no war on. And probably that's the reason why it's called a special military operation. And the Russian economy is growing at 2.6% this year. I mean, what a fantastic turnaround. And, does this mean that there could be greater possibility for Indo-Russian ties, despite the sanctions, given the fact that, the government of India is very keen to pursue a trade relationship with Russia, the Russian economy?
See, I want to tell you first thing, we Indians are in war for last whole of my life. From 1945, we are at war with Pakistan, or we are at war with China.
Yes.
So we are in war every day, but we Indians don't feel it.
Right.
So why we're talking about the special operation which is happening 500 kilometers, or it is not happening in the land of Russia. So whatever is happening in the land of Ukraine. So, there's no war-like situation. That is the first thing. The second thing, what I wanted to say is, I just missed my mind. Russians are doing everything correct. The things are, please see the streets of Moscow. They have made it more for walking people. What I've seen in 2000 and what I see today in 24 is totally different. It's become more friendly. Do you know this is most probably the most safest place in the world for the girls and for the students?
Yes.
What we are suffering, what we are hearing in America. I have a daughter, a young daughter, and I don't feel any fear when she's traveling alone in any time. Even in midnight, I can tell you it's very, very safe country.
Right.
So he made this country to one of the most safest country in the world.
Yes.
We are not talking about Paris, where you cannot go on the middle of the, in the capital, you cannot roam freely in the middle of the night. So this is not what is happening in Russia. It's a very, very safe haven, and especially for girls.
Right. Very safe haven indeed. And my last question to you, Mr. Kotwani, is that the fact that Russia is now pursuing a look east policy, if I could call it that. This is an Indian expression. The look east policy is when the Indian government kind of started looking more towards Southeast Asia. But now, given the sanctions against Russia, Russia is increasingly looking at the Asian countries, its Asian neighbors like China, maybe Iran and India as well. There's talk of two corridors, the North-South corridor through Iran and the Caspian Sea, and the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor. How enthused are you about the prospects of Indo-Russian business ties given these two new economic corridors that are coming up?
So let us first talk about sanctions. Why you people are talking about sanctions? You are not giving a proper information. You telling sanction is a lie. Please tell American sanctions or please tell European sanctions. This is not United Nations sanctions.
Right.
Right? We do have sanction on Pakistan. We don't do trade with them.
Right.
Is that true? So please don't confuse people with the word sanctions. Right? This is a country imposed sanctions. It's not a United Nations sanctions. Right? Now let us talk about Mr. Prime Minister Modi here. Was he not smart to take the oil? That time he didn't talk about sanctions. If our country needs something,
yes,
it's our right, and
absolutely,
we are in the market and we do it. So this is exactly I want to tell to business people, be smart.
Right.
Right? If it's a benefit to you, please make profits. This is
right.
a time to make money.
Right.
Right? What sanctions you're talking about doing business with America or Europe? No. And let me tell you, Russians are a little bit more better quality conscious people. Cost, the of the company, the quality compliance of this country is always one step more than Europe and America.
Right.
So there are no sanctions. Sanctions are, we have to see what is benefit to us, and we should take more benefit of this sanction. That is the first thing.
Right.
Second thing, let me tell you, business is all about making money. We lost this opportunity before during the, we were the biggest trading partner during the
Cold War.
Communist time.
Yes.
Yeah. Now the time they've got one more last chance. I think our Indian business people are having the last chance, and they should grab it. The country is giving all the benefits what they give it to other people, but for Indians there is always extra benefit, and let me tell you, which they cannot put on a paper. Like for the pharma industry, they told me land is there for you, all the normal things, water, gas, everything is there for you. Other than they said, yes, you can bring your employees also. Today the biggest need in Russia is our
manpower,
medium and high quality manpower.
Yes.
Right. And this is the first time they have got more than 60,000 work quota for Indians.
Right.
60,000. So, there's a very big demand in every industry, not only in oil and gas, in construction, everywhere there is a demand. In swing department also, there are like more than 6,000 jobs have been opened up in Russia.
Right.
So, and let me tell you about all these jokers. I will use the word jokers, who has gone to the military.
Right.
These people come here to find a job, which they didn't, which were cheated by their agents.
Yes.
And here they found a job for 250,000 rubles a month.
Right.
So they have themselves signed the documents and they took the job.
Right.
Now they are telling they took a job as a helper. Please tell me which helper in the world gets 250,000 rubles a month salary.
Absolutely.
So they knew what money they are getting, and they knew
and the
what
risks that they were taking. But that's a separate story. I'm going to come back to you for Mr. Kotwani. Thank you very much. That was Sammy Kotwani joining us from Moscow to talk about the impact of President Putin's re-election in Russia. Another 6 years, Russia is open for business, as he says. That's a story that we've been tracking for several years now. Let's look at this exclusive story inside the mind of Putin, only on the News9 Plus app. Download the app now.
Vladimir Putin restored national pride for millions of Russians. A psychological commodity that was lost after the disintegration of Soviet Union.
He has restored a lot of Russian power, and he's given Russia a global influence that it had lost.
From a nondescript officer of the notorious KGB, his loyalty and attention to detail catapulted him to Russia's topmost office, the Kremlin.
He's a low-level KGB officer who was elevated to a position of great power because of his willingness to protect the corruption of the Yeltsin era.
The incredible life journey of Vladimir Putin is a case study on how to become a ruthless dictator.
Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.